Again, Nations in Arms, the Empire's Grand Campaign, 1805 scenario, whatever you want to call it. All right, after an initial start where Napoleon got himself stuck in Britain, this last turn, and we went another full video for a single month or a single season. This last turn, we saw France come to an agreement with Austria, Russia, and Britain to let them out, to get out of the war. Austria and Russia insisted on this because they wanted to go to war with Prussia. Britain was pulled along because without Austria and Russia, they can't really force France. They can't do much about France. They could have taken their victory point hit to break the alliance. They're going to have to do it at some point or another, probably, because they don't want to be pushed around in this way. But right now, there wasn't much except the Grand Army in Britain, which was a little bit of a risk, right? If the naval chits came out poorly, and they might have, and the battles went poorly for the British, which is highly variable, the odds were well in the Brits' favor, then France might have conquered Britain. And that would be really bad. Really knock them, on their ass in a way that, hey, let it out. Spain was left on their own against Britain, that means. And Russia and Austria positioned themselves, grabbed some territory, and Prussia went into a negotiated peace, not a formal, it had formal effects, but not one of the formal surrenders, in which they had to give Masovia up to Russia and Saxony over to the Austrians. And I should look for some of these, put one of them in Masovia. Might be probably another one here. And also granted the Russians the right to remain in Prussian territory for a turn, giving them enough time to allow Prussia into the coalition now, so that we can have all of Europe smacking into France. This is the cost they paid for that attempted invasion of Britain, along with the navies that they lost. Not a hell of a lot else happened. Portugal is nearly conquered, but it can't fall until winter. Again, some weirdnesses in this game. Minor countries only surrender in winter. Whatever. Here in summer of 06, I think that whatever agreement was come to in that peace, and you're free to negotiate that, right? You're not free to talk during the diplomacy phase, but you're free to negotiate peace during the conquest phase, where if you're at war with someone, you can add you can put a negotiation forward that includes all kind of information you wouldn't be able to get in the diplomacy phase. Which, again, feels like there's just not, there's not a rational excuse for the limitations on one side but not the other. But I refined some of my decisions there, which is that it makes more sense for the Russian army and the Prussian army to move into place. So they're going to form a coalition, but the net effect is going to be the same, because France is going to declare war on one of these nations in the coalition. Given that there was already a coalition between Austria, Russia, and Britain, France just declares war on Prussia. But they were forming coalitions, so it all combines together. The one thing we don't have is a Franco-Spanish alliance, although they will operate within the empire boundaries as well. And I think Turkey stays out of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to include Prussia in the coalition, and France is going to go to war with the whole coalition again. So now we're just starting the game a little late, I guess, with Prussia in the war. Kind of fucked up things, although everybody knows what may or may not happen, right? I mean, certainly the French know that they're planning on going into a war on this turn to keep the coalition off its feet if possible, or to hit it as quickly, while it's still spread out. Is that the reinforcement and replacement phase, when you arrange the leaders, happens before the negotiations, right? Yeah, diplomacy happens after that, but it doesn't really make much difference. So for leaders, the only thing I did was switch to Massena and Napoleon, to put Napoleon up at the spearhead in the German areas. I think it's more important for him to be able to be flexible there. I'm not really planning on making any great gains against John. I guess Milos is gone. I don't know. But anyway, Charles still up here. Didn't see any reason to rearrange the Prussian or Russian leadership. I should check what's up in St. Pete. Alexander off the field for the Russians, actually. He's kind of interesting. Like Napoleon, and maybe, I don't know if there's, like I said, I don't think I saw Francis and the Prussian king wasn't in charge anywhere. Alexander actually has the capability to command 18 steps, just like Napoleon does. But it's not worth it. Like, an extra couple of steps. Okay, the size of an army is an important thing, especially if it's bringing, lots of artillery, cav, whatever, because those all add to your factors, your modification factors. But Alexander, without a bonus, is not worth putting in there. So I swapped Bagration in for him, just to be able to have a decent commander there. Now, Bagration is kind of interesting because he's one of those who's a better non-army commander. And we'll get to, I guess, rolling for neutrals or whatever, the minors. So the only minor diplomacy that worked was Denmark got stripped away from France. The way I read the rules, there's no modifier for this roll, but they're just neutral now. Now, I piled their leaders, their force that they have under the chit. This isn't what I intended before, because, like, miners that are set up don't, miners that are not in a coalition at the beginning of any of the scenarios don't have any troops. Some of the miners that are part of the coalitions don't have any troops. But anyway, when something joins a coalition, or, when it joins a war, well, actually when it joins a coalition, I allow them immediate build. I'm not sure that really makes sense. Does it make sense that Denmark would demobilize its forces so quickly? I don't know. I really don't know. In this tense world, I feel like putting the troops that they have over there and allow them to reposition makes sense. But then again, I feel like detachments should join the forces that they're in. That's going to put us to the initiative pool. And I'm going to break there. I didn't do a shitload, but I just don't feel up to it. Rather read. Okay, we opened the summer 1806. Winter quarters not in the cup. We got a coalition land 4 that was allowable. French went last. I looked over all the cards. Feel like I have to do that every time. Yeah. But I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I don't know. But yeah, we're gonna get started. It's just about Thursday. It's got to be getting close to midnight or after already. But and it's funny, like a couple of days after I kind of gave up raid, there's like shit happening in the game that might have prevented me from giving it up, to be honest, but I'm done. I'm done. Um, yeah, it's a coalition 4, which means there's not a lot of things that can move, but I probably want to get some of the forces into play. It's really hard to make this decision because, for example, Charles up here, I don't really want to expose him. And it's summertime. I could wait and and maybe the French come to me or whatever. I don't have to move forward. With the Russians, moving forward might not be a bad idea, but it might not be great either. It's like really hard to make your decisions in this game. I decided to pass on that coalition 4, didn't see anything I really wanted to move. And the reasoning is delaying allows me to react better, right? But on the other hand, if there was some kind of edge I could get out of a first strike or something, you know, maybe Charles could have made a quick run across at Davout or something, but just doesn't feel like I have that big of an advantage. On the other side of things, the French Empire too, well, I opened up with an attack by Massena in Italy, and the French have the Grand Charge, which they can get. That'll get them a +2 to their die roll. And then they're also going with a rivalry, and I'm using Ney, who gives +2 to the die roll for this, which means that stays. So that's a -1, as long as the Austrians have at least 2 or 3-star leaders. They should. Yeah. They only have 1 here. I'm missing a leader. But John is also a 3-star. So that, we'll put that there. The Austrians chose a refused flank, which isn't going to have any effect. They only got 2 cards versus France getting 4 as a pick. We'll see what the numbers line up as. The battle was nearly a draw. Both sides took 4 losses. The plus gave Massena the advantage in his victory. He ended up killing Ott. No other losses, including Ney, who got to make 2 leader loss checks. That was 3 of my movement points. I've got enough to try to seize Milan. Really iffy to try to cross over into Mantua, across the rivers and whatnot. Did not get the pursuit. I sort of cheated. But yeah, I didn't get the pursuit. Or the demoralization or anything like that. The Italian theater, I jumped over to the Spaniards, and they took out Lisbon, gathered their army, heading down towards Gibraltar. Remember, not part of the actual empire, like they're not allied with France anymore, but get to do their shit. Napoleon took off, grabbed Baden, moved in, destroyed a small Austrian 4-step force, caught it trying to withdraw. However, that didn't go as well as it might have, because I lost Bessier, who I used for his +2 bonus. Which, that's a fairly significant loss. I was wondering if Ney counted as a cav leader because, he was used as a cav leader at Waterloo essentially, but no. And then marched up and took Mainz and the Palatinate. And now I can concentrate on the stuff here to the north and also possibilities of reinforcements. Napoleon's army is under strength, but like Reed's Bavarians can come in. I could bring the Swiss up if I want to. They don't really do a lot. Like garrisoning fortresses with extra forces is not all that effective against armies. It might be okay against weaker forces. Or I shifted some additional forces into the army of Germany to reinforce Napoleon there, and including Reed, well, not including, actually, I can't move this because this was a 2, not a 1. This force moved forward. Not much else that I want to do right now. But the important thing is the Grande Armée is here next to Napoleon. So now that is a consolidated army. Well, those are separate armies, so they don't count as a single army, but they could consolidate into an army group. And I could use March to the Sound of Guns for that. Now, crossing the river is a penalty to doing that, but it's a chance that Charles probably doesn't want to face. See, the thing is, the difference between like a regular force and an army, a regular force can be at most 6 steps. An army, even a small army can be up to 12 steps, right? So right there, you're looking at 2 to 1. Could be worse than that. And it almost guarantees that the army is going to have the cav advantage and the artillery advantage unless, they've got shit stuff with them. Which means, similarly, an army group of 2 armies is going to be significantly better than a single army. It's going to probably have that 2 to 1 odds. It's going to probably have all the advantages. So again, it's not really something you want to face. Clustering everything together is the answer in this game. I gotta say, there's something I don't like about this game, which is the attrition chart goes up to 17, which is, the size of bigger than an army, okay? But it's not significantly worse than the 14 to 16 column, which is an army. Which means that an army group stack suffers attrition, at approximately, at a better per capita rate than like an army would. Also, there's no real harm to having all your forces consolidated. See, this is something that War and Peace gets right, which is you want your forces spread out so that you don't take attrition. Now, I found that it's really dangerous to have your forces spread out when they're in contact or close to the enemy. You want to consolidate them for that. But it creates, that right kind of concept of consolidate your forces when you're near the enemy, keep them spread out when you're not. The designer seems to think that there's ways that I don't quite understand, and I'm hoping to fiddle around with when I get to it and try to get a feel for it. But I have pushed pieces around trying to do it, and I don't quite get it. Of like being in a formed position so that you can support each other, kind of like little triangles of pieces moving. But anyway, regardless of any of that, there are absolute disadvantages to having all your forces consolidated. This game, it's possible to have everything in one hex. Like, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm lying. Maybe army groups can only be 2 armies. Yeah, I'm looking for stacking. Oh. in it here. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. An army group can be up to 3 armies. Nobody has more than 3 armies except France. So only France is like prohibited from having pretty much their entire force, their entire national force in one hex. And the bigger your army group, the more likely it's going to win and push anything aside. Yes, you want to split up in order to grab, lots of territory when you're not facing the enemy. You don't suffer attrition normally, because you're normally going to be in supply and keeping your forces, at least if you're me, not risking the attrition. You don't want to do that. In War and Peace, any big stack is subject to attrition, so you don't want your army consolidated in that game, unless you need it to be. Does it make much difference? I don't know. And maybe the hexes here are of a larger size. Doesn't feel like they're that much larger, but definitely, this board takes up less space going across the territory that War and Peace covers. But we're talking at most like 2 to 1. I could look up the scales and whatnot. Anyway, I did a whole chit, and it was, enough effort that I'm done. Afternoon on Thursday, I don't feel much like doing anything, but I felt like I should come up and play some because honestly, I'm playing slower or more slowly than I did when I was playing Raid. Just because reading and everything, sitting out on the porch, doing stuff to some extent, but mainly I'm reading and sleeping a lot. And Raid is putting shit in that I'm like, oh fuck. I would have been, totally stuck in the pattern because there's a must-do fusion in place and all kind of stuff like that. All right. So what's going on? We got a coalition move 3, and I'm trying to figure out what I did. I reinforced John, I think it is, back here in Italy, bringing his army up to size again. Between the rivers and that, I'm not and the fact that Massena, or whoever's here, yeah, Massena's back in Italy after having failed once and lost the kingdom. After Massena, managed to have a success, but he's activated already, so he's probably not going to make a risky move and an attrition check. But now Charles made the decision to go after Davout up here and marched across the river here. Let's get the little contact marker into Cologne, but was intercepted by the Grand Army. Now that's not Napoleon in charge there. That's Soult, I think. But it's a full army. It's going to be a real fight. But this means Charles gets to get a one-on-one fight against it. He was actually planning on trying to push forward and hit Davout, who has a smaller force, off on his own, and let the Russian-Prussian army come forward to threaten the dual army. But hey, as long as I'm just hitting one army, it can't be too bad, right? I don't know. But this is going to be another draw of cards. The French Soult only has a +1. So he's going to be getting 3 cards. Charles has a +2. He's going to be getting 3 cards. So it's going to be all even up on that. Card choices. The Austrians chose a refused flank. This will just potentially cancel a flank attack, which French have this weird thing. This isn't a flank attack. It's a flank march. The French didn't get a flank attack, so that's not an issue. I held off on ambush. Doesn't take effect. Wouldn't have any impact here. But also morning fog, because I think I may have more artillery. I have a lot. It's going to be a 1-point bonus either way. I can't give up advantages. For the French, though, their primary is skirmishers, which will be a -1 to the enemy die roll, which I mark with a different colored die like that. It's automatic for the French. And then Uhlans, now this is an iffy one. In case of a pursuit, the winner eliminates one enemy step even if his force does not contain any cav corps. Actually, I probably don't want to play this. Do I? I'm looking at the Grand Army. I have a lot of cav in here. Hard call. Well, we played it. What the hell? It's just an additional step. So the way it's written, eliminates one even if his force does not contain cav corps. Kind of sounds like if you don't have cav, this is useful. I think it's an additional step is meant. But it's not really worded that way. It's worded in a way that makes it sound like, yeah, if you don't have cav, this works. But, like, because you'll eliminate a... So here's the thing. Eliminates one enemy step, not one additional enemy step. That would be the word that would be necessary to take the interpretation I'm taking, even if his force does not contain any enemy cav corps. The problem is it doesn't really track in either direction properly. Like, neither condition, it doesn't seem to say adds an additional step, but it also kind of implies you wouldn't need all these words. You would say eliminates at least one enemy step, even if it, or if his force does not, or eliminates one enemy step if his force does not. The even if kind of indicates it's an additional, the word additional not being in there. I don't know. What did I not? Oh, and I put a leader forward to roll for that. I gotta do that anyway, and it's a +1. I gave up the Battle of Nations, which could be very useful, but right now I'm just facing Austrians. Do I know that? Yeah, pretty much, but there might be times when I'm not sure whether I'm facing a multinational force, or I know I am. But in this case, I'm pretty sure I'm not. Let's roll the success for the second, for that Uhlans card, and we get it. Okay. Stepping into the raid. I'm aware of stuff that's going on because I get videos in my news feed. I'm not watching them. That would be too much of a temptation. So, you know, it's like I'm doing what I can to not get interested. I'm not like succumbing to, oh well, I could just keep up with the information of the game. No, if I was keeping up with it, I would probably be playing again instead. I know myself too much. I would get interested in it all. The problems I have with this game, at least when the armies are concerned, you know, when it's two small stacks of units on the board, I can pull them down and do this. The combat system is about at a level that La Grande Guerre has in terms of the complexity of what I have to do, right? What sucks is having to run back and forth between these army boxes. La Grande Guerre, you're facing one unit versus one unit at a time in the combat sequence. You know, it's a different type of system, but it takes the same kind of time. But this one, I'm walking back and forth and doing all these calculations just to get my single die roll. In terms of narrative, I get a lot more out of the La Grande Guerre one for the same kind of effort. For this, I get a lot more exercise. If you were playing an opposed game of it, Or if these damn cards, if these damn army boxes were on separate cards like they are in Empires and Arms or something, I could pull them close to each other and do these calculations much more quickly. But I'm having to just keep, you know, and the walking's not all that terrible. Some of it is just the, like in Summer Storm when I played that thing. Some of it's just the, okay, I have to check this, you know, who has the most artillery, who has the most cap. I just have to keep checking all these different things to make comparisons between them, where I have to make different counts again and again and again. And of course the dice are the only mnemonic way that I have of keeping track of what the total modifier is before the die roll. Austrians should have played the fog. They're one short on the artillery, so there's a bonus there. The French are committing the Imperial Guard. I still haven't finished my modifiers calculation. It takes a couple minutes, you know, for each battle to figure out the modifiers. I don't like that, right? Like in Summer Storm, I just did not like having to go down and figure out all these things. These kind of systems work okay if everything's kind of in mind and easy to see. For Sword of Rome, I like it, right? For Druid, it's okay. For Imperium Romanum, it's okay. Here, I'm just struggling with it so much of the time because it's really hard. I have to go and count, again, all these factors again and again. It's just too much. And in Summer Storm, it was too much too. It ended up in a very, very realistic system, I think, for Summer Storm. Just one that wasn't worth the effort, you know? Especially since I favor gunfire to odds for something of that level. Yeah, you don't want to mess around with the French when they have all their toys. It comes out with the interception, +9 to +4. That'll drop down to +8 to +4 if nothing were to happen. But if this goes 2 rounds, which is unlikely, the losses are going to be heavy enough. So +9 to +4, let's roll it, see the die result, then I'll come back. I feel like these major battles are worth looking at a little bit. Ooh, that's an 11 to 15. The Austrians are going to win this one. 5 plus CL to a 4. Committing the guard, having lost the battle, that reduces my morale down to a base of 3. I also lost some goodies. Took a leader hit there. I'm trying to think of... I get a replacement, which I think I took more than 1 leader hit, to be honest. I think I took a loss as well. But I'm not positive about that. But I was looking for, hey, I didn't have a cav leader in here. And I mean, I might as well throw someone else in as well. I don't feel like I can put either of these in unless their national forces are there. I don't think that's really the case, but it feels to me like it should be. So, do we get a pursuit? And it'll be nasty if we do, because these are big, fresh armies that can hit real hard. Like I said, the base morale dropped down to a 3. The French had so many different morale classes, but the Type 4 ended up being the biggest. That didn't sound good. Fuck. I hope I don't have one. Yeah, there's a little guy there. That's this year's first. Fuck. And he's probably dead. That hit hard enough. Son of a bitch. Okay. So sometimes they survive. Every now and then. But that looks like a broken bird. Okay, so base was 3. Commander bonus brings it back up to a 4. And we did 1 extra point of damage, brings it back down to a 3. So it's has to be greater than, so it's 50-50. French army is demoralized and will be pursued. Because the Austrians don't really want to face another army at this point, they took some damage. The pursuit wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. It was only 3 steps, even with those Uhlans in play. The Austrians actually back out. They would have sieged Cologne, but it's Prussian territory. I guess the French would have ended up in a siege of Cologne if they won the battle. I don't know. But yeah, now on to the rest of the coalition forces moving up to take place. But I had wanted to try to slip Charles through and see what happened. As it was, having to fight the battle was pretty bad. But I can conceivably create a big enough army group that the French can't touch me, and then try to defeat them, you know, in detail by aiming for single armies if possible. A moment and talk about the chit pull, one of the major factors in the land functionality in this game. Because I was walking downstairs and thinking, wow, this is a big chit, right? A lot's going to happen on it, and I'm going to want to break. And my immediate thought was, yeah, but even when I get little chits, I do 1 or 2 of them, and I'm like, yep, time to break now. Now that's just my psychology at play. You know, I think I've gotten to a point I'm no longer willing to do a big chit, whatever. But what does it really add? So it's possible a chit pull. You know who's going to go first on the land phase. You don't know where the naval phases interact with the land phase, which I'm not sure terribly works, but it may kind of simulate weather effects and such not, which aren't otherwise addressed in the game, so I don't know. It's possible you get a chit like a 4 movement chit, which you can't really use for the forces you need to. So you can't jump in right away and take a first turn when you're given the option. It gives you the opportunity to hold out and not make moves. And, you know, if something, you know, if you're waiting on the 1 move or something and that comes out, you're like, okay, I got to move some of my forces, whatever. So it does throw a little bit of like weird little monkey wrenches into your plans or whatever compared to an I go, you go. And the only other thing it really does for it is the winter quarters. It plays a push your luck game against someone who's wanting to hold off for too long. I'm not sure it's worth the complexity of this chit pull. And it just, you know, there's stuff you have to keep track of, i.e. who went last. There's just all this shit going on, and it adds a little bit of stuff to the game, but not a shit ton. I don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, so like the coalition's willing to move forward because the empire's already moved. It's a summer turn, so nobody has to worry about the winter quarters. That's not going to come out. You know the entire chit pull is going to come out. But at other times, it does add a little bit of something with the, I had better move my units that I need to move. I don't mind keeping something in a reactive basis if I don't care if it moves. But stuff that I need to move, but, you know, earlier in the turn because the turn could end. It does not feel terribly impactful on the game. Like, I don't feel like an I go, you go would be that much worse. This took Hanover this turn. I think that's the only city in Hanover. I'm finding it very, very difficult to tell whose stuff is what. And this is the fault of these control markers. The control markers are needed to indicate control of fortresses as well as territories. That's not a good solution. EU, which uses territorial control markers, I use them all over the place, whatever, has fortress markers, which you replace the fortresses for. I talked about this earlier, but it's really causing me problems because I don't have little control flags over everything that's kind of in doubt. So like, I have to remind myself that Hanover is French. Now, I have my cheats like this in play, but I want to be able to see on the map who owns what. Well, last time I'm going to pop in on this chit, I think I've still got some Russians to move, but I don't need this anymore either. Oh well. The Russian army is moving up hellbent for leather. They have to take Paris, and they win the game. And that's something everybody's got to keep in mind. If we beat the French and the Prussians take Paris, it's over. Now, what about our Austrian? Like, their victory conditions are really, really easy. They just needed to beat Prussia once. And then they're in the I'm close. Dresden, Munich, Venice, Mantua. We need Rome. So we need to win the Italian war with the Austrians. A little harder. Oh, stop it. Hey, he survived. I don't know where those ants are coming from. Not used to seeing them up here. Used to seeing them sometimes in the bathroom. And I mean, they're not doing any harm. They're not carpenter ants or anything, but just curious about them. But yeah, what was I? Oh yeah, what I came up for was not the realizing that Russia just needs to push forward, and that means the coalition may fall apart if anybody realizes that Russia can win. The other thing was, look, the stacking rules already cause these weird situations of like, I can't move here. This is in conjunction with the Chitpul, right? I basically can't move a Russian unit into here, Kustrin, because there's a Russian army into there, because there's a Prussian detachment. Now, I could temporarily absorb that detachment in the army if I was allowed to absorb detachments, but I'm not. It's another hitch. It's already problematic enough with I can't have two forces in the same hex. It becomes an overstacking situation. So if I have a couple shitty leaders, they can't be in the same hex with only one of them being able to command his forces or anything like that, with the others being kind of hors de combat or whatever. Hors de combat. I don't know. I don't know how it's pronounced. But anyway, there's some fundamental stuff here in those stacking rules that just doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. And the other games do it much, much better. It felt like it was kind of an interesting concept to make stacking dependent on leadership. I think it should just be effective troops for combat, and I've seen that before in other games, or some of the other options that I've put forward. I think this game is just flawed on so many levels. I'm having real trouble buying it, But again, we'll have to play War and Peace sometime while I remember this. It's a shame because I've completely forgotten Napoleon Against Europe, this designer's other game. Except that, man, that was a fucking mess and I hated it. This one feels like it's got more interesting ideas, trying to bring the hex grid Napoleonics to life. I don't know. It needed a hell of a lot better development than it's got. Anyway, let me move that last Russian, and although I don't even have to, but because I've got two more. I've got the 1 and 2 chits left. You know, since we own Warsaw, our supply lines have become much, much easier. We don't have to link through Warsaw. It can be a source now. So we went back here and are going to pick up that depot and head it back. Those extra troops, I'm not going to need them anytime in a hurry. So I was wrong about this being the last action on this chit. But again, it's a big chit, and you know, I didn't need to move this guy right away. But the point is, once I start moving a bunch of pieces, I'm like, let's move everything we can. You know, I just don't want the next chit to be of this kind. You know, I've done the thinking and everything. I might as well complete the move. I just don't feel like the flexibility of these chit pulls does what I want them to do, in any sense of the word. Don't worry about that. I got some coalition navies like floating around where I don't necessarily need them. It's been on my mind recently, and I'll probably make a video about it. I'm no longer capable of functioning in this world. I've kind of, like, I made choices all along that are, you know, offbeat, odd, whatever, that maybe had a higher cost in one way or another. And they're getting closed off. Like, things that I was doing are becoming more than I can handle. I've got to make some switches, and I don't know if I'm flexible enough to anymore. Like, everything's kind of crashing down. Anyway, that be as it were. And that's one of the reasons I want out, is that the cost of making these changes in my life is just, you know, emotionally, it's just too high for me. So, got a neutral land. The Turks moved some more forces up on the Russian border. You know, with Russia with no troops inside, this is beginning to look a little tempting, yeah? But then I got an Empire Land 4, and I got a few things to keep in mind here. One is the French army that got repulsed back here. Not that. Wherever the Grand Army is, back here. That's got to do a recovery, because it's going to suffer attrition if it doesn't. However, I don't have to do it yet. This is only my second land move. But I moved Davout with the Army of the North into place to attack Charles. Now, it's possible I might want to force march with Napoleon to continue hitting Charles if that doesn't work. The cost of an attrition, forced march, etc. is worth it to destroy one of those armies. And I feel like Charles has taken enough hits that, and certainly after Davout hits him, that if I need to, it's worth making that attempt, even though it costs me some more troops of my own. Anyway, we got Davout with the Army of the North. That's going to be another major battle coming up. This is the thing that I missed with the chit pulse. This actually does matter. I'm able to do some things and then react with other pieces, giving me that kind of pulsed movement that a CDG or some of the old Victory games were able to give, where I don't have to move all my forces at once. I can move some up, tempt the enemy to attack me, and then, you know, do a counterattack or whatever. That's sort of what happened here, although, to be honest, I feel like Charles somehow actually beat out, well, first of all, he got the success. But anyway, on to it. We're looking at, I think, 4 cards to 3, right? Let me think. 1 base, 2 for the leadership. Yeah, 4 to 3. The cards. First of all, here are ones French chose not to do. Ambush, can't do it. It's not in that terrain. Cossacks, I don't have a Cossack or a light cavalry force, strangely enough. The Army of the North, has cuirassiers, but no cav, no regular cav. And then rear guard, the pursuit losses are lowered by 1 if the defeated force contains at least 1 cav step. You know, this applies to either side, as far as I can read it. So, yeah, I don't particularly want the pursuit loss to be lowered. I want to win the battle. That's why I'm attacking. What did I end up choosing? Horse artillery. I have a 2-step cav corps in that cuirassiers. That counts. For the Austrians, flooded river, again, doesn't count. W went around the river. Grand battery. Strangely enough, the Austrians don't have 8 artillery points. What did they choose? Just 1, an echelon. They do have enough undemoralized steps with the morale requirements. So, we're both looking at a +1 to begin with. I'll come back with information later in the battle. I don't know at what point. Even battle +7 on both sides. But again, the Austrians, nice die roll, man. And they're getting a 7 CL. Should have put the rear guard in, I guess. You know, can't count on the dice being that extreme. All right. Well, I'll calculate out the results. It's not pretty. Right now it's 7 CL to 4L. That was a painful hit. Ended up on one side, maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. Turned out okay. Was I had to use 3-point morale for the French because I had like militia and a lot of cheaper stuff in this army. But it didn't break. Fell back up here, which is not the best of places to be. Not disorganized, and there was no pursuit. But I got to start thinking about whether Nappy wants to go up and try to clean Charles out of there. Charles has taken more hits, so he's in worse and worse shape each time. And yeah, this pulsing allows me to see the kind of, reactive movement. So I do think the chits serve a purpose. I know I was griping about them just recently. Oh, fuck. I got one of these detachments I see has moved. It's just so hard to tell. It has moved its way into the army of Germany where it couldn't have possibly been. I don't know what the fuck to do. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of that roll. I'm throwing that roll out. I played fine without it, was happier without it. It's adding this stupid burden and just causing nothing but problems. They don't add much to an army, okay? They add a step value. They add a regular quality morale level. And it just doesn't make sense that they shouldn't be able to be utilized. Now, the only reason why they need any special rules is I can shift a detachment into place and funnel it, and it doesn't pollute the activation level of an army. And I think that was done. I don't know if it was this turn or earlier. You can do that if you incorporate it. No problem with that. Just make another rule. It pollutes if you don't, if you're not incorporating it into a unit. I think that's the only reason why detachments aren't allowed to be included in armies. I'm really not sure what it matters anyway, right? Like, this whole non-pollution is a weird concept. Why is it that I can funnel these replacements into place without them tiring out the whole army? And it creates all kind of weird decision making where maybe you want to take hits on all your units if you have a bunch of detachments to throw in to fill in, which just complicates the whole system for no good reason. I don't know. Napoleon marches up, ends up hitting Cleves. Charles decides to take this as a siege instead this time. And Honors of War comes up, he and his entire army of the Rhine are now available for next turn to come in, somewhere back in Austria. France ends up not taking an attrition hit on this, so at least there's that. And I captured Cologne and ended up using that detachment for that instead of money, even though I've got a decent amount of money for the rest of the year. Figure the detachment, get it out of the way. It's just confusing things. Pretend it never was there. And that's probably all I'm going to do. I do have this infantry corps that I could shove into one of the units. That's probably not a terrible idea, to be honest. And free up another commander. I don't know how likely a coalition advance. Napoleon wasn't hurt by this at all. So, you know, and there's no great hurry here. The Austrians are going to be coming back. So yeah, probably this is pretty close to the end of the turn, even though we've only gone through a few of the chits. I try to cope with reality and make decisions as to where money has to be spent and where ignored. Losses ignored. Which one? We got a neutral naval. You know, the Turks are the only neutrals. They don't particularly want to do anything. Then we got the coalition naval, and the Brits moved out and blockaded everything, locking it down, keeping... So had to do some weird movement stuff to do this, to keep Nelson in the channel. Could have just moved Nelson's stack to blockade this, but I want his powerful naval capability in the channel as a last resort. Just in case. Essentially, there's no way... Oh, there was a moment when I could get this out. Let me do so, because it being on the channel means it can't come out. Let's put this up in Liverpool. Basically, what I had to do was open up a space in the channel fleet to let other fleets get through. So, yeah, it's just a fucked up... Again, stacking in this game, both naval and land, is fucked up. I'm not sure that there's much I want to do. I'm going to, you know, when the next land activations come up, I'm going to think about it. But it's hard to make a case for pushing armies further in this game with the forced marches and whatnot. Small forces, maybe. That's another interesting anomaly as I'm working through the coalition land and realized, I could shift some Russian troops down through Stralsund. Can't switch Swedes through there because they'd be overstacked. But Norway's not on this list. Now, this list includes... What it doesn't include is provinces of major powers. It includes, as far as I can tell, all the minor locations, although I'm not sure. Well, Crete, these are all Turkish, so that's okay. Malta's covered. Baleares, I think, is part of Spain. Sardinia and Corsica. Corsica is part of France. Sardinia is tracked, okay? You know, we're seeing these things. It includes all the different provinces, including some stuff that's really goofy, like Geneva or Neufchâtel, who are basically just loose locations ready to be taken. Okay, fair enough. This is the one thing that does not exist. Now, I don't know if Denmark or Sweden controlled Norway at this point. It was regularly a point of contention. I'm guessing it's Danish, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it's like okay, what do I do about that? You know, now for what it's worth, there isn't much of value. There's one city, one fortress, one thing, one element of any interest in Norway. Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Denmark because I think that's what it is, but it's not covered in the game at all, which is kind of interesting to tell you the truth. Fuck. Meanwhile, I'm still, hedging on the fence about these detachments being able to move forward and do a damn thing. I know I sort of decided and then stopped. It's just, the game is, it's just pissing me off. And I guess we get to the end of the turn because I just pulled a couple of chits saying, fuck it, I don't know what's going on. I don't think there are any. Oh, fuck. Did I fix that unit? I should have fixed that unit. This guy. Okay, I gotta make an attrition check on him. He would have fixed himself during some of those, just to recover. Miners can't be conquered. I don't have to worry about stuff like, hey, did Baden fall or something like that. They can't be conquered until the winter phase. Again, it's something that feels wrong to me, you know? And really grinds up against stuff, but it's like there's got to be a reason for it, just like there's a reason for the detachments. And until I can kind of figure out what it might be, not really thrilled about it. Like trying to change it, but I'm not thrilled with how it works either. Most games on this subject allow for miners to be knocked out, you know, essentially on any turn, whatever that means. And it depends on the game, you know. Like Age of Napoleon, the turns are 2 years long. Napoleonic Wars, I think they're one. Empires in Arms, they're a month each, as they are in War and Peace. Here, it's each season, though. It just feels like you should be able to conquer and say it's gone when you hit this conquest phase. But the conquest of minor powers only happens in the winter. Conquest of major powers, though, can happen at any point, which creates this weird sort of timing where, like, you don't want to knock a major power out before you've conquered its minors. So you kind of want to knock it out in the winter only, which is, it's just, it's like you're doing these gymnastics for no real reason that I can see. But anyway, it saves me the effort of having to worry about like the miners falling and whatnot, and being able and having to reinstate them and all that kind of shit. I don't know. It's coming on to evening. Reality is really kind of trembling and not holding together for me. There's one thing, at least Raid like kept me grounded a little bit. I'm really falling apart at this point. I no desire to play it, just nothing left to ground me. I brought the reinforcements in. Well, the honors of war troops. This allowed me to reposition Charles and the Army of the Rhine down here at Innsbruck, which is a big deal because if we look at the Austrian victory conditions, got Dresden, Munich, I do not have yet. I need to get Munich. I need to get Bavaria underhand. But Mantua, which I have, Rome, and Lyon or Paris. I think I can probably take Bavaria out. Yeah, maybe this isn't the best thing. Maybe I put Charles up here because I don't have anything here, just a supply wagon. There isn't much of an Austrian army left, right? I got forces up here that I can bring down, but I'm going to look at trying to get achieve my automatic victory or get it within range. Maybe Russia and Austria can win together. There's not much that could stop that if they can time it right. Of course, Prussia cannot win. They went the wrong way. They should not have joined the coalition. They should have stuck with the French. The automatic victory conditions are just too important, I think, to be playing around with letting someone maybe achieve them. Does that mean Prussia wants to withdraw from the alliance? I don't know. You know, it cost them a victory point to do it, and but they've got a pretty big army right now, and could kind of at least let things go for a little bit, even if not joining the empire at this point. That's going to put me to diplomacy. I bet France allows me into the empire bloc if I so desire. So that's probably not, it won't require any discussion or anything. That's probably not too big a deal if I want that. I will have to look at the restrictions on the diplomacy to see if I can do that while there are Russian troops inside of Prussia. You can't break an alliance if you have troops in another player's country, but that kind of makes sense because you would then get to repatriate and all kind of stuff like that, which might be too extreme. So as far as I can see, the option is open to declare war on the Russians if I so desire. I don't know, would that trigger siege zeros? Well, not in Saxony, because that's Austrian now, but over in Glogau down there. What's this? I don't think he's in a capital. I don't know. Who's got the first land movement? That might decide things here. Okay, the French went first, or went last, which means that the coalition will get the first land movement. I think I want to withdraw from the war. I think I made a serious error, making serious errors all over the place, but I think I made a serious error by aligning myself with Austria and Russia, and now that's becoming apparent at last. Other hand, let's not be too hasty here. I need Hanover. I have taken Hanover, but if I go to peace with France, I'll lose that advantage. So I think I do stay in the coalition a little bit longer, enough to get Hanover. Then I don't care about anything else except taking Paris, but I have to get all the other prerequisites done first. Feels like these automatic victory conditions are driving the game in really ahistorical fashions. In a way that EIA, with its dominance situation, which is similar, just doesn't do. The dominance is like not winning the game. So it's not you must stop this at all costs if somebody's about to stab into it. And rather, yeah, it's a significant advantage is all that it ends up being. Anyway, we'll stay in the alliance, in the coalition bloc for now, and see if we can maybe beat back some of the French with a couple of nations' armies. So that just throws us to the normal diplomacy phase where we roll to see if we gain control of anything. Came of any of that, we recharged the cup. One of my viewers gave me some advice on how to invade Britain properly, and it involves picking a coalition naval ship, So now you have two Empire chits in the pool to their one, and then not invading until after, not trying to do anything with your ships until that last coalition naval action is done. And yeah, I screwed up. There's no question. I screwed up. But it's kind of caused a weird, sort of very volatile situation in terms of European politics now. All right, going to break for a bit because even just doing the diplomacy, it's just like, I don't want to pull a chit anymore. Up here, it's July 3rd. This is the second time I've heard what sounds like a fairly massive number of fireworks going off. First one was right around dusk. I can't see anything. There's ones that come out over that I can see most years, but I'm wondering if like the main fireworks down at Alton Baker or something were fired off before, because it just sounded like so much. And this, it's going and going. I don't know if they decided to spread it out all over the weekend. I tried looking it up online. Anyway, I'm playing the first chit for the turn, and it's a coalition move 4. I've got Charles starting to capture Bavaria. I don't know if there's anything else I really want to do. There aren't a lot of leaders with a 4 initiative. Morning on Friday, my head's still swimming with sleep, but I couldn't sit still. Got an Empire Naval. Nothing I can do with my Navy anymore. I'm beaten there. And then an Empire Land 4. The Land 4, I made a decision. Massena, his Italian army is a little too weak right now. It didn't get many reinforcements. It was beaten up before. It really can't face Johann or whatever is down there. And then I look elsewhere, and the Grand Army over here under Soule can't move, but it's also a little weak as well. I've got Napoleon's army. He could come charging down, maybe to hit Charles there, but I'm more worried about breaking up another of the big armies. Now, the Army of the North is not huge. The Army of Germany is big. I'm looking at that as probably a full-sized army. If I could bring Napoleon up, join with Davout, and smack into the Prussian army, I think we'd gain a big advantage. The problem with it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to integrate, 6, I don't make it. I can't extend my movement. That doesn't give me the capability to fight anymore. I don't know what I want to do. I'm really in an ugly position here, and I feel like I have to fall back because I can't face, say, a 2-army stack of Prussians or a 2-army stack of Russians without being a double army myself. And I may just need to find a good place to integrate my forces. But it means falling into, giving up the strategic initiative here that I thought I might have been able to have after beating Charles. So Napoleon swung down and slammed into Charles again and got a decent result. Nothing great. The die roll modifiers were big, but the Austrians again got a pretty decent roll. Charles seems to have Napoleon's number in this game. Meanwhile, I had to pull this back. I fell back to Mainz or whatever, which is close to Soule, close to Napoleon. I don't know if it's enough, but it's possible that the Germans could strike across the river. It's possible the Russians could strike across the river, but it's good defensive position. I could have actually pulled closer to Soule, But I don't want to do that because I wanted that riverline defense, and I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that with a reactive move or anything like that. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to pause here. Just moving a couple of pieces. The amount of brain power in trying to figure out what I could move where just hurt me somehow. Ended up quickly. No more land phases. There was a neutral naval that came out. There was another coalition, another empire land, but it was obviated by this. And 2 winter quarters came up in it. So that's all that happens this autumn. Not much. I think there's not going to be any conquest because miners can't be conquered. Got to remember that. And yeah, I mean, all we had were Charles and the reaction to his attack on Bavaria. And I really don't think there's anything to do. We just push into the winter turn, which also might be especially short because winter quarters can come up directly there. Again, since I harshed on Chitpul a little bit as to not adding anything, I found another thing it adds. The short turns. You know, just not knowing that you're going to, you know, how much you're going to get done in a given turn. And again, I like that factor. So I had sort of a, is it worth it because it's kind of a hassle and whatnot? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. I'm changing my mind back. Originally, I liked it. I thought, without, you know, dissecting it too much, but then I started feeling like it was generating too much effort for my psychological situation. But I think overall, it's good for the game, and I'll just get over my problems. Reinforcements, etc. You know, we got 1 leader back. Not much happened last turn, so that's sensible. But I do want to make a quick check on money, and also on, you know, possible conquests and stuff like that. What's going to convert over? But right now, check on money. Nobody's got $8 to build an army, and you know, I don't know if it's worth throwing down some money to buy supply depots. The Brits don't really care. The French might gain a couple of locations. So, you know, there's just kind of this, I'd rather not spend combat units when I can just spend money on garrison. Although something feels like it's cheating there, because if I want to buy detachments to use garrisons, I have to use combat unit for that, and it's just, something's kind of weird about it all. I don't know what. Happened in diplomacy. Turkey's not going to go to war in the winter. Nobody else had anything. All the die rolls came out crap. The Brits actually forgo. What is the past tense of forgo? I like forgo, but I know that ain't right. I think it's just forgo. Even making a roll, everybody else fiddled around with one, but you know, like Spain going for Algeria, that's kind of buying themselves trouble. Morocco was bad enough. Coalition threw their naval, or the Brits threw the coalition naval shit in there, just to give me an opportunity if I want to sail down to Portugal. Considering intervening there, given that the Spanish failed to take Gibraltar. If we can prevent Portugal from falling, that's probably good. Then we can, you know, get our money from Portugal and troops and whatnot. Otherwise, yeah, then we just lose Portugal, right? Which would hurt us. And yeah, otherwise just threw the chit collection together. I've decided what Prussia's goal is, if I can remember. If I do it all today, I will. Which is basically to get Hanover out of this. That's what they want out of France. Yes, they want Prussia, they want Paris too, but they can't win until they get their territories back. So once I get Hanover, I'm perfectly willing to align Warsaw, Dresden, Hanover, Hamburg, and Paris. Hamburg, look, I've been rolling for the Hansa the last couple turns, but I don't know. I could just invade it and, you know, break the coalition, invade Hamburg, and, you know, end up on the other side of whoever. Like I said, I'm gonna be kind of loosey-goosey with the coalition actions. But if somebody decides to defend it, I'll be on, or with the block alignments. If somebody decides to defend it, I should be on the other side from them. I shouldn't be on the same chits as they are. That just, because that allows for a gaminess that the chits you should be attempting to avoid. So, like, you know, if I end up against one of the two blocks, I should be using the other chits. Otherwise, I could, by choosing which block I'm in, end up determining whether I automatically go first or second against my opponent. And that feels like it just violates everything that there is about the chit pull. And that, you know, writing rules to make that work the way it's supposed to was too much effort. You know, it would have required a lot of complexity. So it was easier just to say, yeah, this is a pretty unlikely situation, just let them pick, but I would rather just play it by ear and try to do what I think the rules should have been as much as I can. It may not be avoidable in some circumstances. All right. So I had the weird initial situation of a winter quarters counter being drawn first. I don't think I've ever had that before. I found a couple of interesting things, some of which appear to be, again, not what they meant, right? During autumn turns, second time winter activation is drawn, the phase ends. During spring, ignore the first two times it's drawn and put it back. But both naval counters have to be drawn in spring only, okay? Obviously, summer, the naval counters are going to be drawn. And if they're not, something weird happens there where both sides get their naval activations. But then we run through what are general use of initiative pools, not the winter quarters where we had all kind of other discussion. And here is the rule that I kind of remembered. This never, I think, actually happened. But during subsequent turns, the first marker is randomly drawn. However, it cannot be winter quarters. Can't be the land activation for the side which had the latest activation. If this marker is drawn, it is ignored. It's set aside and put back in the pool as soon as an activation marker is drawn. So it can't be the first chit. You're not allowed to pick it as the first chit at the beginning of the scenario. I knew about that. But I finally found confirmation. And again, you know, I was forced into it by drawing it. But yeah. Okay. Not really sure what the point of that is, because like a neutral counter could come up and that would count. A naval counter that has no effect, basically. In this case, I got a coalition land 4. I'm going to see if there's anything I want to do with it. But it does feel kind of odd that it's like, yeah, somebody's got to have a chance to do something in the winter. Why? Maybe the winter's harsh. You know, maybe it starts early. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me that somebody has to be able to do something, has to have an opportunity at some level or another, even if it's, you know, not one that can be taken advantage of. For example, the coalition land 4. I've got quite a few, 2 or 3, two leaders with a command rating of 4 that are on the table right now. But it might not be the case. You know, there are scenarios where that just isn't going to be applicable. Oh. Kutuzov spurs forward in a vain hope of being able to get to Paris. Not this turn, but you know, if he can take Vessel up there in Berg, he can extend his supplies. If he could take Holland or Antwerp, he could do sea supply in case Prussia is shaky, which we know they are. Just all kind of stuff along those lines in terms of, you know, trying to look at contingencies. Moving forward seems important, but we could end up in a troubled situation where we have to set up supply lines going through Austria again or something like that. And we've already moved some of our supply, I think, that allowed for that. Maybe not. Maybe we're okay. I think there's still a wagon there. Okay, so the next shit is a naval chit. Charles, I forgot to mention Charles. He pulled back a little bit to where he can reinforce. He's not safe from Napoleon, but he wants to be in a fortress so he can reinforce. And he's hoping that he doesn't surrender, you know? But if he does, it'll probably be in honors of war. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Anyway, a naval chit came up next, and the Swedes dropped Stuart's command off here in Lisbon. Now, this is a naval invasion, which is kind of weird because it combines a land activation into the naval movement. We did naval combat against the coastal batteries. You know, we have 2 dice, they have 1. So, yeah, we're in pretty good shape and got through that. The units landed. There's no combat outside, but now we get 2 siege attempts. This is not terribly likely, to be honest. We're at +1 on the siege table. This is totally fucking weird, right? Following the second siege attempt, if the fortress is not captured, the assault is repulsed and the surviving invaders are removed from the map and brought back into play as reinforcements during the next spring turn. Not this next spring interphase. Everything else that returns things returns them in the spring interphase. Now that it's going to be the case either way here, but I have to say it's pretty fucked up that like that's worded so differently, leading me to think that all those things should be actually the spring interphase, or they meant to put spring interphase in here. But again, I don't trust any of, you know, any sort of attempt to make the rules actually work the way they're meant to be. So I'm just going to say next spring interphase. The fleets are placed in the sea area connected to the invaded harbor. And I guess they don't have any movement left. Okay, you know. That was my shot to save Portugal. That's all I had to attempt that. And I don't think I want to do anything else with other boats. Oh, I got these Russian boats. I should really get them back, just in case we want to do naval operations against the Turks. France's navy is, you know, handcuffed by the Brits, so I don't really need the Russian fleet for that. Where is the Russian fleet? Oh, it's up in St. Petersburg. Okay, fair enough. Okay, another Empire Land 2 chit this time. Moved some reinforcements up to actually Davout's army, which I don't remember which one's which. The army in the north. Napoleon swung over and indeed managed to get the honors of war on Charles, throwing him back here. So don't manage to destroy the army, which is what I really wanted to do. But then also moved up and took Ratisbon. So, I mean, it's not horrible. This is my biggest army right now. Fits that Napoleon's with it. And Spaniards shifted forward. Otherwise, not a hell of a lot of detachment moving up here, which you know, given that it's only one step, I'm able to move it at any speed I like, which again feels a little odd. Feels like that one chart should have something on the 13, at least a 50-50 chance of losing the step. That would fit in more, you know. You push troops too hard and they're just going to dissolve. Especially considering that at 2 steps, it's pretty nasty, like during winter at least and whatnot. I guess we keep pulling. I've got hopes of finishing the turn today and having enough time to nap a little bit. Got the next move. Hey, I've got all of Hanover with just this one fortress. That's great. Marched forward, attacked Amsterdam, succeeded, forced the French fleet out, and it had to fight the blockade. Now it managed to win, forcing the English back to port, and now we got a French fleet out in the North Sea, I guess, just floating around out there. Not going to be of any great value. Could get hunted down. There are 2 coalition naval chits in there. I got more to do on this. This is the big move as far as I can see it for the coalition. An army keeps advancing. Has vessel under siege, trying to get a 2-army group into play to face the French if possible. The Austrian armies, well, there's no army here. The Austrian forces are falling back around Prague. Might not be great. There are some surrender conditions that get lessened if you have nothing outside your home territory, I think. That backwards. If you have nothing inside your home territory, that's undemoralized. But yeah, those forces up there, I mean, I'm not going to be able to reduce the Austrian surrender, which would be just Vienna if their entire forces within Austria were demoralized. But of course, that's national territory. Well, no, Venice isn't national, or Venice is national territory. Lombardy is national territory too, isn't it? Or did we make it into a minor? I got it over here because it has no troops. So yeah, it's national territory at this moment. So unless the French could take Lombardy and Vienna, and they can only take Lombardy at the winter, so yeah. Do I want to move Massena if I get a shot and take a chance with him? I don't know. The Austrians are kind of rocking right now, like, you know, on shaky ground right now, but it's not that bad. I don't think they're ready. They're ready to fall. So probably not worth it. The Army of Italy for the French is much weaker than the Austrian Army of Italy. The Austrian Army of Italy looks pretty full. The French one is pretty beaten up, and that's why neither side is doing anything. The Austrians are a little afraid of the French one because technically you can't know what's where. And it just didn't seem like that's where the advantage was lying for us, especially since we could lose Lombardy if we lose Mantua. Oh, geez, I don't know if I want to pick more chits. Yeah, I mean, this was the big one, right? There's one more French one that might have an effect, but I don't expect anybody to be forced marching in the winter much. Thing is, yeah, it's Friday, it's my dance night, right? I missed last week, and because I couldn't tell what day it was. And then my ankle and my knee are still hurting from several weeks back when I had an accident with my cart. So yeah, I've gone dancing on them since then, but they hurt more than they did when I went dancing on them for whatever reason. On top of that, this is the night when like the DJ mix is the one that I kind of appreciate the least out of the set, but don't mind. Everything's good enough. So like there's these feelings of, yeah, I shouldn't go. You know, it was the one thing, the one piece of sort of, it is still the one thing where I kind of get out of the house. Although I went shopping, you know, I've got a lot of free time now without Raid, where I feel like I'm going to get out more, but then I just end up reading. Gonna get out more, gonna do more work around the house, whatever. Nah, it's not gonna happen. I know me. Those fundamental problems are still there. The only real, like there's two reasons for going. One is I missed last week, and if I get in the habit of missing, you know, a couple weeks in a row, it gets really, really hard. It's already really hard. And then also, it's 4th of July, man. Being here is going to be kind of depressing with the fireworks and everything going. Although I get a good view of them if I want. I get an excellent view if I want. I get a view. Otherwise, just from my window. But I have, you know, an outfit that I like to wear on the 4th, and the fact that it's actually, you know, the pants are gone now. They're back there with the Bucks. No way they'd fit me at this point, I think. I don't know. I've lost a decent amount of weight since, but yeah, I don't want a chance. I don't want to dig to find them particularly. But yeah, I don't know. My plan was to go. And anyway, let's pull chits because I've packed a pipe. We hit the winter quarters without anything happening. But the first chit drawn was an Empire Land 4. Messina I could do something with. But I have Davout here that I could have done something with the Army of the North, which is not in great shape. Like, it and the Grande Armée together are an army. Okay? And I was kind of hoping for a 3 so that I could coordinate and maybe move to cover things up here. But it didn't happen. I could have shifted this, but I wanted a coordinated action, get the two armies together, whatever. Did not happen, so we get to the winter end of turn phase, which is kind of the interesting one. Final attrition, I don't think anybody was cut from supply. Which gets us to conquest of minor powers, and I think we have some. Well, I know we have some. Holland and Hanover are going to be captured by the Prussians. That frees them up to maybe make peace with the French. And I could see the French saying, yeah, screw it, you know. We got Austria kind of on the ropes, and Russia's making their stab to win the game. We got to stop that, right? Getting somebody out of it, and maybe eventually on our side, because they have claims on Russia, and to some extent on Austria, although Saxony's easier. Well, honestly, Poland can switch hands too, because the French can create Poland, but we also have the situation in Cleves, which I don't know if it leaves. Well, we have a situation in Berg. Berg is under siege. That didn't fall yet. Okay. Cleves. I don't know who the fuck owns Cleves. Cleves is Prussian originally, so that is not going to fall. But if Prussia and France go to peace, it would. Like, it would be up for negotiation, is what it comes out to. Cleves is Prussian and what? It's a Prussian minor. Interesting. But it can't be, oh, it's a minor, so it can be conquered. And it is adjacent to French territory, so it just becomes part of France. So that's an automatic surrender. Hanover has troops, as does Holland, so they will turn out to be Prussian minors. Oh, fuck. All right, we missed something completely here. Effects of conquest. Otherwise, its land units are destroyed and removed from the game. Removed from the game may not have the meaning that I think it does, except for Polish units which stay under France's control. Because there's things about reinstating a minor where it comes back with its troops, which to me means maybe I'm wrong about Italy. Maybe Italy can be reinstated. Fuck. God, these rules suck. They just really do. Venice could be conquered. Again, I'm reading this. They're reinstating a minor. I think Italy can be reconstituted. A minor with available combat units must be reinstated at this time, except if adjacent to the original national territory of the conquering power. Original national territory, which can then annex it. So Venice was able to be absorbed by the Austrians. So I don't see a rules conflict there that I thought I did. But again, these rules are really crappy. Hanover could be absorbed into Prussia, but Holland cannot. Now, what does it give me to absorb Hanover? Actually, I can't, because Hanover is part of French national territory, right? Yeah, Hanover is part of French national territory, so I can't absorb it. All I get is I get Holland out of this. And the French get, I don't know, Cleves, I guess, which they must absorb, I think. I'm not positive. But they want to, because Cleves has no troops. Other one, Baden, has been completely conquered. And that is adjacent to French territory. That can be absorbed or can be turned into a minor. If it's a minor, I think I have to keep Palatinate with it. Not sure. Create the Confederation of the Rhine, I'd need Thuringia, but I think I also need to, like, get Bavaria to give up Berg, which I can't do on my own. It's not clear how much of the Confederation of the Rhine I need. Thuringia is particularly hard to capture the same way Geneva and Neuchâtel are, because I can't just garrison it with, you know, I can't just garrison a fortress. So all I can do is like leave a detachment or troops sitting in its capital. And that is particularly hard to convince myself to do, because quite often just, you know, I can just buy garrisons during the course of the turn, but applying troops to it, they're at risk to be taken, and they are manpower no matter what. There's no way I can get around using manpower to garrison under those conditions. So it's particularly hard to take things that don't have fortresses, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, I don't know. I have to put something in onto the fortresses anyway. I don't know how big a difference it is, but it is a difference to me. And actually, I think Berg, okay, in order to take Berg, if the Prussians want that, they have to actually do the same with Frankfurt, because the capital, and this is the same with Bavaria, Munich, the capital has to be occupied. We knew that earlier. I'm struggling with the conquest rules always. Baden's tiny single-step core is not worth it, so I'm going to absorb it in the Palatinate here. Unfortunately, Württemberg is one of these, hey, didn't have a fortress, so not going to be able to take it easily. Like, yeah, it is easy to take. It's just, it doesn't happen because I focus so much on the fortresses, the supply lines, all kind of stuff like that. The idea of just grabbing a country like Württemberg, it feels alien to the rest of the system, so it's like hard to convince myself that it's worth doing. The big thing that we're hitting here is the major power. Now, that sort of free peace isn't here, but it is here under conquests, and it's supposed to happen at the end of the turn. And I think this is the point where Prussia opens its negotiations. And for its negotiations, it says, look, you give me Hanover. I don't care what else. That is an absolute requirement. And again, Hanover's core, probably not worth it to Prussia. Prussia has a hard time building their army up, I think. I don't know. How big is their army right now? They've been saving it. They still have a fair amount they could build up. Taking Hanover. See, having it as a minor makes it more susceptible. It makes it differently susceptible, right? It makes it more susceptible to conquest, but only in winter. Which means if we get flushed back, it'll be harder to take. Whereas Prussia being defeated, yeah, you know, Hanover could be taken as a minor or could be taken as a province from them. So it doesn't really, so I think taking it, and the other thing is I've got the capability of reinstating them as a minor at my will if my army's built up and I decide I need those extra corps. So the big question is, does France accept a peace with Prussia? And I think the answer is yes. Have we taken anything from Prussia? I don't know. I think we took Cleves, but for the most part, I think we can accept that. Maybe Neufchâtel, if that's Prussian again, we just absorb. Because that's just kind of bullshit. Yeah, that's a Prussian minor country. It's not worth shit. So what if we call Neufchâtel in exchange for Hanover? And I think the French will just accept that. Now, making this free peace breaks the coalition, so it costs Prussia a victory point. I think that's the end of 1806, putting us to 1807, where all kinds of new stuff and exciting things are going to happen. But yeah, Prussia has pulled out. They haven't made any promises to join the French, although they've definitely said, look, you know, if you start getting the Russians on the run, yeah, we're joining you, you know. And maybe the same with the Austrians for that matter, because getting Saxony back is of importance. But, you know, France knows that Prussia's, every European power basically wants to defeat the French, except maybe the Russians. The Russians are the only ones who don't need to. Well, the Spanish don't need to as well. And that's kind of nice, right? Like, there's something I like about that. The problem is that these automatic victory conditions put you in a position where, oh, look, somebody's about ready to win. We had better stab them. which doesn't feel appropriate, right? It feels appropriate in the sense of, so in Empires in Arms, the same kind of thing can happen where like, oh look, somebody's doing way too well. Let's try to bring a coalition against them and forget about the we hate France type of, you know, we hate this new upsetting of the European order. There's a different kind of upsetting of the European order, which is that the balance of power is swinging too far in favor of, say, a Russia or an Austria or whatever. Not likely Prussia. That feels more appropriate. That feels like you're taking the real politic of the age and putting it into play. Whereas this feels like, uh-oh, somebody's about to win the game. And it's just about a gamey type mechanism, and it doesn't really generate the kind of reaction that you expect in the Napoleonic era in terms of these nations having a sort of an internal, I don't know, a consistency with their actual policies and whatnot. The actual policy was we have to defeat France. The fact that Russia is able to get Warsaw, not that hard, and that France is defeated and Russia was the one who defeated them. You know, it happened to be the guy who took Paris that turn. That just feels so marginal. You know, I got one Polish province off Prussia, and I was the guy who made it to Paris. It just doesn't feel like Russia is really a dominant power who's threatening the stability of Europe by being the guy who conquered Paris. So, and it's really skewing the gameplay. Prussia would not be making these moves necessarily in a game like Empires in Arms if, you know, if Masovia was taken from them, which historically it essentially was. They didn't turn against Russia for that. Yeah. And the same kind of thing, again, it doesn't happen in any of the other Napoleonic games that I'm familiar with. Again, I'm going to leave Napoleon, whatever it is, Napoleon Against Europe, the other game by this designer, out of the picture. I remember it really disappointed me in a lot of ways. This may have been one of them. You know, it may have had equally troublesome victory conditions. I just remember walking away from it thinking, this wasn't adding anything to my experience. You know, I'd rather play one of the light ones or something else. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this video is going up, and we'll talk about 1807. Maybe I'll get to one video per year. That would make me happier. Less time spent on all the economic and shit. But I'm getting so confused every time because, you know, the rules aren't good enough to rely on, and I can't remember what my decisions are. I go back on them like I did with the detachments. I just don't know what to do. I feel like I should just stop playing, to be honest, because this game is just too troublesome as it is.